The Princess of Wales is said to be doing well, having spent a second night in hospital following major abdominal surgery. Earlier today, Prince William was seen leaving the London clinic, where Kate's expected to stay for the next 10 to 14 days, with the Prince clearing his diary to support her recovery and care for their 3 children. The shock news regarding the operation came just moments before it emerged. King Charles will also be in hospital next week for a procedure on his enlarged prostate. Speaking in Aberdeen today, Queen Camilla said, "He's fine, thank you very much. Looking forward to getting back to work." So, with the King out of action and the King in waiting looking after his wife, who is leading the royal family? Earlier today, I caught up with TalkTV's royal editor Sarah Hewson and asked her if the royal family looked a little thin without the so-called big 3 royals.
Yes, when you take the Prince and Princess of Wales out of the equation and you look at the rest of the working royals, well, the youngest are the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, who are in their late 50s, Princess Anne, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, who are in their 70s, the Duke of Kent in his 80s. So we're looking at a much older royal family. I mean, that was apparent after the coronation. There was that photograph of the working royals all lined up.
Yes, and many of them past retirement date. Many of them, some people would say, not very kindly, but kind of rather past their sell-by date in terms of doing a very demanding job.
And that's where you see the loss of Harry and Meghan, for example, and the void that their departure to California has left. And that really is very apparent now when we're seeing the Prince and Princess of Wales having to take time out and the King also being out of action for a little while.
Absolutely. And here also you see, don't you, the gap left by Prince Andrew having to be, sidelined and no longer a working royal, because he would have stepped up if he'd still been in favour.
Yes, and there are calls for his daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, to be brought into the fold of working royals. There's an irony here, because we've talked for so many years about slimming down the monarchy and having fewer members of the royal family on the official payroll and wanting to better reflect society and better value for the taxpayer. And now here we are talking about, well, are there enough of them?
Quite. And somebody who's always switched on about absolutely everything is Princess Anne, who always does seem to shoulder the burden of most of the royal activity. But she's spot on, isn't she? She's saying, well, streamlining. I'm not sure that's what we need now.
Yeah, because she said that, that might have been relevant some time ago, but since those conversations about slimming down the monarchy, the Queen died, the Duke of Edinburgh died, Prince Andrew's out, and Prince Harry's gone off to California. So it is a very different-looking royal family now.
What would you say if I said Zara Tindall and Mike Tindall are hugely popular, Princess Anne's daughter and son-in-law? Everyone adores them. They really do seem to have the common touch. They're very jolly, they're very genial. They appear to be incredibly happily married. Wherever they go, they seem to represent so well.
They're in Australia at the moment. They are a huge hit down under. Yeah. But the beauty of that pair is that they are able to be themselves, and Zara was always raised to be a non-working royal, not given a title, very down to earth. And I think they're happy with their lives the way that they are.
Right, so you think if they were to be approached, they might say, well, not really.
And Princess Anne always made it clear she didn't want that for her children. She wanted them to be able to live their own lives.
So what is the picture?
Well, I mean, we're going to see a lot more from Princess Anne, from the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, for example. Princess Anne's already the hardest working royal. Last year, she had more than 450 engagements. She supports 300 charities and organisations and military regiments, for example. She was just in Sri Lanka last week with her husband, Vice Admiral Tim Lawrence. They were there for a 3-day trip. As always, she flew on a commercial airline. They carried their own bags. They got on with it. They came home, back to work. This week, she's on engagements in Scotland. Next week, she's going to be in London and Norfolk. But I think the King knows he can rely on her. She's his right-hand woman, as it were. There was a really nice moment in a documentary that aired over Christmas, behind the scenes at the coronation, where you saw the relationship between those siblings. And she walked up to him as they were all getting ready in their coronation robes and just said, "Hello, old bean." And there was a slap on the shoulder and a laugh between them. And you could see the closeness between them. Of course, they're the closest in age, but also He knows that he can trust her. She's also gold stick in waiting at the coronation.
Yes, but how many more than 400 and something engagements a year can she possibly be expected to do in her 70s, or indeed at any age?
Yeah, I mean, there are those, and Republicans would argue that, oh, what, doing 4 or 5 engagements a day? Well, so what? Think about what other people in the real world do. And if anyone can do it, Princess Anne can do it. She has a remarkable work ethic. She is no nonsense, no fuss. She reminds me a lot of her late father, Prince Philip, and she just gets on with it. And I think she recognises, last week, she talked about, you know, one person can't do it all. And you need other members of the royal family to be the eyes and ears, as she described it, and to go out there, meet people and report back, and that's certainly what she'll be doing.
Do you think the country would take kindly to Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie kind of being upgraded, as it were, and being paraded out on far more activities? Because I think they have been perceived by some to be, you know, slightly dilettante about the whole thing, you know, going on lots and lots of holidays, leading really very gilded and delightful and gorgeous lives, and not really contributing a great deal to the sum of earthly human happiness of other people. But I mean, I don't know whether that's ungenerous and unfair.
I think they've both got their own careers now. They've both got their own lives. They've both got their families. I think they've both shown willing, when needed, to come back into the fold. I think they would be very happy to assist. I think there's also sympathy for them in the public, that this last couple of years, with everything going on around their father, must have been incredibly difficult for them. But the point is, you add more in, it costs more money. And in a cost of living crisis, if you say to the taxpayer, well, we want to have a couple more members of the royal family, that means greater security bills, for example, that's not always going to go down too well.
Sarah Hewson, thank you very much indeed.